Hello, it's Deborah from the attic, and today I want to show you some cards made using Cardio card stamps, and the cards are slightly 3D. So I really like Cardio card stamps. I think they're very versatile, and if I was beginning stamping again, these are the ones that I would go for because you don't have to get hung up on colour. These work beautifully just in simple black, so your outlay is minimal and yet you can create the most beautiful cards. The two that I'm using today, the sets that I'm using, are mini tall trees. That's this one here. This has been available for a little while, and this is Starstruck. This is a newer stamp, and I'm going to be using the star and the dog and the cat, and there's a few other animals. We might slip the mouse in as well. I've got all of the things that I want to use to make my card here. I've got three little colours. These are Narcissus, Orange and Hyacinth, and I've got my VersaFine black ink. I've got some shabby white embossing enamel. This is from Stampendous, and this is a nice mix of white and gold glitter and bigger gold particles, and when you heat these you get a really nice shimmery effect on your card. But I may also use Deco Art Glamour Dust. This is crystal, and this gives a fabulous, really detailed shimmer, a real subtle shine to backgrounds. I've got three little trees on my stumpy acrylic round blocks, and I've got a mouse there just in case I decide to use it, and I've got the star already mounted on a block. I've got two of the animals. These came from the Starstruck set, and I've cut these out. So I've stamped these with the black ink, and then I've just cut around them. I've left myself a nice generous white border. It makes it a lot easier to cut everything out. I've got a frame which fits on top of a white top folding card. We're going to start with the white top folding card, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use my frame to give me a clue where I need to work within. So I've got a little pencil, and I'm just going to do a couple of lines here and here because I want my border around my frame to be white. So now that I've got that in place, I can rub these out later on. They're not going to impact on anything in the finished card. The other thing that I'm going to get, this is a dry baby wipe. Now, these techniques that I'm going to use to make the card are all techniques devised by Wendy Gage at Cardio Cards. I'm not taking any credit for anything that she's put out there, but she's very clever in the way that she works, and she gets the most stunning, beautiful effects using just a dry baby wipe and some very simple little tiny inks. I've got a piece of scrap paper, and I'm going to cut a slight curve from this. I'm going to keep both pieces because the top piece is going to help me draw in a hill. So now we've got all of our bits and bobs ready. The first thing that I want to do is place my star. So I'm going to bring in my frame again. I'm going to get my star, I'm going to get my pencil, and I'm going to hold the star roughly where I want it to be, and I want this to be centre-ish. So I'm going to use my pencil just to make a little dot roughly in the centre, and then I know that I will get the height of the star in my frame without difficulty. And I'm also going to use my dot to help me place the inky background. And I've got my dry baby wipe, I've got my Narcissus ink, and I'm just going to smudge the ink over the dot, my little pencil mark, and hopefully I'm doing this roughly the shape of my star stamp. So once I've put down a little bit of the ink, I'll check my star, and I can see, it might not be too clear on the camera, but I can see I need to add a little bit more around the sort of halo of the star at the top. And I'm bringing it to a point lower down. So now if I check my star, I think that's good. I want to give my star a little bit of warmth. So I'm going to get another space on my dry baby wipe, and I'm going to take orange. I've got my little scrap of paper which is going to help me just knock off the intensity of my first sort of dab. I don't want to put too much on, and it's easier to put on less and then add more than the other way around. So I just want to put a little bit of the orange in the middle of my yellow, and that will give my star a lovely glow. So that's my star position ready. The next thing that I want to do is put in a hill. So I'm going to put my piece of paper, I think, here. I'm going to check that with my frame. Yeah. I've got one colour, Hyacinth, and I've got to be careful that I don't go beyond the lines that I've drawn in pencil. I'm going to knock off the initial colour on my waste paper, and then I'm going to drag the colour down onto the card. This way I get nice even colour spread and I don't get a blob. If you just started here, you get blobs of colour. If you knock off the first little bit and then gently drag it onto your card, it goes on really smoothly. I want the intensity of the colour to be right at the top of the hill, so just under my yellow scrap of paper, and I want it to fade away as it goes further down the card. All the time making sure I don't go over my pencil line indications. I'm happy with that. I'm going to use the bottom half of my hill. I'm going to leave the tiniest little sliver of ink showing through there, and I'm going to ink up my trees. Now this is something that Wendy Gage does a lot. She makes first, second and third impressions of the trees. So we're using the stamp upright. I go first, second, third impression of my tree, and you can keep going, it doesn't need to be limited to 3. Do whatever you think is necessary. When I take away the paper, it looks as if I've got a horizon, I've got trees on the horizon there. I'm going to stamp my star, again just using black ink. I want to show you how effective that black ink can be. And I'm going to try and get the centre of my star over where my little pencil mark is still just visible. Give it plenty of time for the ink just to press down into the card. I'm going to check everything still fits within my frame, which it does, and I'm going to use an eraser just to get rid of my pencil marks. They've served their purpose now, I don't need those anymore. I have my frame and I have my animals. So the next thing that I'm going to do is use craft foam to, I've already started cutting out some strips, and I'm going to glue the strips onto the reverse of my frame so I make my frame 3D. I'm not going to use the shabby white enamel in this card because I'll show you how it turned out on a couple of cards that I've already made. Now I want to add some shimmer, some sort of snow or frosty covering to my scene here. And I like dots, so I've got a little glue pen, and I don't want to cover the hill because I might want to add a mouse. And if I put glitter all over my hill, I might not be able to stick the mouse on the glitter. But that will be just enough to make the hill shiny. This is my glamour dust in crystal. I've got a little wooden spoon. I just sprinkle that over. And that's just ideal. You can see the sort of frosty shimmer to the hill there. Really pretty. Now I'm going to glue my frame into position. I'll just look at it that way, make sure it's square, which it is. And I'm going to use my craft foam again to stick on the reverse of my animals. I want them to be sitting pretty much side by side, looking up at the star, but I want to leave room for a mouse. So here's my mouse, already on a block. I've got to decide where I think he will best go. So let's have a look at him on some scrap paper. Oh, he's so cute. Okay, so maybe my little mouse will go in the centre, so it will go between the cat and the dog. It's not an easy stamp to see where those feet are, so I'm going to use the tail to help me line it up properly. Cute. The dog and the cat will line up there. So I'm going to cut down some craft foam small enough to go on the back of their heads. I've got a little scrap piece here from something earlier. They don't need much, they just need a little bit just to make the head stand out from the card. And because you're using the same craft foam as you used to make the frame, you know it's going to be the right depth. My dog will sit about there, my cat will sit the other side, and their bases or their bottoms fall just outside the frame. I quite like that because if it was all contained within the frame, I think it would look a little bit pedestrian. But this way it's as if they really are sitting watching the star. To finish these then, I put a little bit of glue there on the craft foam and a little bit on the base and on the tail to secure it as it sits outside the frame. And the same for the little cat. There we go. That's our card finished. I haven't allowed any room on this card for a sentiment because I quite like just that image on its own, but of course you can add your sentiment on the inside of the card. I'm going to make another card using the same principle, using a frame, and this time I'm going to use Vintage Lights. This is another set of stamps from Cardio Cards, and I've selected two of the smaller of the lights for this card. I'm going to use my pencil again to mark an area outside of which I don't want my design to flow, so that's my limit. And I've got a dry baby wipe standing by. I'm using three colours. I have orange, red and green, and I've already done some testing with these colours to make sure that my inks are nice and moist, and that's going to be important because we want to create a haze around these bulbs, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm making sure that my stamp is really well inked up using the red, and I'm going to just pop it down there, and immediately I'm going to take my dry baby wipe and I'm going to smooth around the stamp. What I want to do is create a haze, a red haze, that is reminiscent of the light that you would get if you had your a string of lights on. And you do have to work fairly quickly to make sure that the ink doesn't dry and that you can get that haze going on. So I'm going to keep working up my design. I'll show you it when I'm finished. That's my lights finished and blurred around the outside edges, and I'm going to join them up. The way I'm going to do that is with a black marker pen. Now they all look like they're on a string, and before I go too far I'm going to remove my pencil lines with my eraser. If I pop the frame over, it's fine, and it looks as if we've got lots of lights gathering in the corner there. I want to make it look as if they are in branches. So I'm using this stamp set. This one is called Winter Blooms, and I've taken one that looks like a branch here. I'm going to use my black ink again, and we're going to do some of that second and third generation stamping again. Don't want too much, just enough to make it look as if the lights are in the branches. And check that again. I think what I may do is just join this branch up, just using my pen to this one here. You can cheat these, it's absolutely fine. It's not about perfection, it's about creating a bit of an illusion. I'm also going to add another little branch just down here at the top of this loop because I think that needs something more. There we go. So it looks like a tree full of lovely lamps. Next I'm using a character from Winter Fun. So I'm going to use this girl character. I've stamped her in black ink and I've cut her out. She does have a hand, I've got it reserved somewhere. And I'm going to give her a lantern to hold in her hand. And the lantern is from the same set, Winter Fun, and it's this little lantern here. So I've got to work out where I want to place it, and I think I want the lantern to be about there. So I'm going to do my trick with my pencil again and just put a little dot in the centre of where I want to put some yellow colouring, and I'm going to use my same inks that I used before for the back of the star to give the star a bit of a halo effect. So I have my yellow Narcissus, it's a very pale yellow. You do have to put on quite a lot, but I prefer its pale colour to a stronger, brighter yellow. So it just needs to be a tiny, tiny little dab of colour. And then I've got my orange, and I don't want to put that on too intensely, so I'll dab some of that off and just put a tiny little bit in the centre of the yellow. That should warm up the lantern. I only just got away with that branch on that corner edge. It went out a wee bit too far, but I think I've just got enough space. So my girl will stand here, and her lantern will do with black ink about here. There we go. I've missed a little bit on the bottom there, but that's okay because I can just fill in a little gap with my pen. It's always useful to have these errors happen because it means that I get a chance to show you how I put it right. That's it, because then I'll use my pen again to take a little line to make it look as if she's actually holding the lantern. That's it. With this frame, I am going to add the Shabby White embossing enamel from Stampendous. This is one that has the white and the gold in it because I want to show you the effect on the frame. It's a little bit fiddly because you've got to sprinkle the embossing powder onto the frame without a way to secure it, so you're going to have to be quite skilled with your heat gun. So I've got a tiny little bit on there. I'm going to get my heat gun. I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to heat my gun for a couple of moments. I'm going to get it nice and warm, and then when it's hot I'm going to put it underneath my frame, and I'm going to let it melt the drops, melt the embossing powder, because this is quite chunky embossing powder, so it takes a little bit longer than standard powder does. But once that has melted into the frame, then I can heat it from the top or the side, because then the embossing powder will have caught on the frame. And it's got some beautiful little flecks of gold. I hope you can see those. And I'm going to continue doing this around the frame. I won't show you me doing all of it because you've seen the technique. So I'm going to finish just going around. I don't think I'm going to do the whole frame. I think I'm going to do the top and the left hand side of the frame, and then I'm going to see how it looks. That's my frame with its lovely thick embossed enamelling. It's got glitter in there, gold glitter. It's got gold chunks, and it looks really, really pretty. And I've left it just on that one corner because I want that to almost be part of the wonder of the girl as she looks up at the lights. She's also mesmerised by this lovely glitter around the outside frame. I'm going to add my craft foam to the back of my frame. I'm going to do the same and add the girl into position, and then I'll come back and show you when it's all assembled. My card is assembled, but I don't like the way that the lantern is flat on the back of the card and the girl is 3D standing ahead of that lantern. So what I've decided to do is I've got some of my yellow ink, and I've yellowed up a piece of white card. This is really tiny, I don't know if you can see this. I've stamped my lantern onto the white paper, I've cut it out, and I've added a little piece of craft foam to the back, and I'm going to pop that onto the card so it looks as if the girl and the lantern are in the same place. What's useful is that my lantern, because I've got that yellow on the card behind my 3D lantern now, it makes it look like there really is a lovely glow from the lantern, and I think that makes it look a little bit more realistic as well. There's one more thing I want to do to this card. I want to make those lanterns really look like they are bulbs, so I'm going to use some glossy accents, and I'm going to go over them and give them a little gloss. Maybe you can see the gloss, but when that dries they will look like proper little light bulbs. that's the last of the cards that I'm going to show you how to make today. This is the one that we made a little bit earlier on. I hope you can see the frosty shimmer on that field. And there are two other cards that I made earlier. This one uses exactly the same technique with the colouring in that hill and then adding the trees, adding the yellow halo behind the star, but this time I've used a boy. I think this is a boy, it could be a girl, but I've used a character holding a lantern, and I've added some gold shimmer using a glimmer pen from Nuvo, and this is a gold pen. And the character that I've used is taken from the same stamp set that I took the little girl from, and it's the character in the bottom here just holding the lantern. This set is called Winter Fun. Another card that I made is this one, but this time using a stag. So again, same principle, and some more frost on the hillside there, the trees, the halo behind the star. I've used the embossing powder on this top corner again, and my stag. And my stag has come from Starstruck. This is the same set that has the star and has the dog, the cat and the mouse that we used in this card. I'm going to leave you with some close-ups of all of today's cards. I'm going to say thank you very much for watching, as always, and until we meet again, take care.